Hello and welcome back to the MedTech Jam Session. This is our first on-site live MedTech Jam Session podcast.
Yes.
And we have no idea how this is going to turn out.
Yeah, let's do it though.
It might be great. This might never be played by anybody, which is okay.
But it could be the highest viewership ever.
But it could.
Lord.
This is true. This is true. So we're here today with our new good friend Bryan Lord from Pristine Surgical. Bryan, thanks for jamming with Chris and I.
Well, good to jam with you, and it's fun to try a little experiment here. So it'll be fun.
Yes.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is awesome.
And it's great because we're at the AAOSM in Nashville.
Yes.
Surrounded by a lot of different companies and pretty well attended by the surgeons.
You know, this is our favorite event actually of the year because it really hits center of the bullseye for us right in the midst of the sports medicine. This and Anna are the two really keys for us.
Okay.
And so this is a good session and good meeting. We've seen good booth traffic already. So yeah,
I'm not surprised. I mean, if you look at where your spot is, I mean, selecting a spot at a conference is an art and a science. But everybody has to walk past your booth to go see the big, giant, arthroscopy towers in the back of the convention center. Was that by design?
Well, yeah. I mean, they have to load them in through the loading dock because they're so big and antiquated, right?
That's right.
So they put the, really new cutting-edge stuff right up front.
But it's a good plug.
No, it's totally a good plug, and I think it's true. And actually, congrats to AOSSM. I like that they have some of the smaller companies at the front, some of the startups, the grinders, the builders, the visionaries who are building the next generation of cool stuff at the front before you get back to the strategics.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool, and I think you guys have a great spot because, again, everybody has to walk past what you guys are doing that's so unique in the space to go see the stuff that we've been doing and seeing for 10, 15, 30, 20, 30 years. So it looks good. So, Bryan, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your journey with Pristine up until now.
Yeah. Well, look, I have a very unconventional start into the medtech space. I started my career actually as a corporate finance lawyer in Boston. Was excited to be part of the big, technology and venture capital community to cut my teeth in the professional world. And little did I know that I had a chance to do that at really the peak of the first internet bubble. So I got a baptism by fire in the world of innovation finance, really, doing venture capital fund formations for companies and funds like SoftBank and others, did public company work and then cool startup stuff as well. So weird on-road in through the legal world, but it was an on-road into the world of actually innovation finance, which was a great start. That led me to one of my small and burgeoning companies that I worked with that I went in-house, which is in the semiconductor space, an MIT startup that was doing advanced semiconductor materials. And what intrigued me about that was they had a licensing business model. And so I've always known in my career that I kind of straddled this, business strategy, legal kind of thing. And to be tip of the spear at a company and help figure out the business plan for a revolutionary semiconductor technology on the licensing side of things was a cool opportunity for a young, bright-eyed guy like me at the time. So we did that for 10 years or so. It was supposed to be two years in riches, right? And it was a 10-year slog figuring out how to license ingredient technology in the semiconductor world. It was a harder lift than I think most of it, but it was amazing technology in use today ubiquitously through all of your devices in many respects, and also applications to solar and LEDs and all that.
Did you have an engineering background before you went to law school, or did you just learn the trade by doing?
I flipped through my dad's popular science and popular mechanics at home. Does that count?
You're showing your age.
Yeah, exactly.
Popular science and popular mechanics. I know exactly what that is.
Yes, we did.
So that company did, we went off and exited that. Mid-career, I did basic corp dev for hire. About that time, I went back, got my MBA from Wharton, and moved firmly over to the business side, which I think had been sort of where I belonged. And then after that, to cut to the chase, got to do some work for Dean Kamen's DECA Research, helped connected some founding doctors that founded the company, some management, tried to nucleate some investors together, and one thing led to another, helped put some initial seed capital in, and then found myself running the company. And that was the early starts of getting Pristine off the ground. So I wasn't, and I really don't like to hold myself out as a co-founder because I give that credit to the genius doctors that had the initial nucleus of the idea. But there were about 10 of us that really got together to get the company off the ground. And so that was, the start. We did a lot of the early development work then and what we called our Gen 1 platform with DECA, really to get to our initial 510K proof of concept, Dean was the guy who said, hey, I really see what the docs have in mind here, but if we could do this single use, what would you think about that? Doctor's eyes got big and said, yeah, let's do that.
So I'm curious then, talk a little bit about the vision. I mean, you said there's a group of physicians that had a specific vision. What was that? And then how did it evolve up to?
The original genesis for the company was to do a corollary technique around minimally invasive visualization, a panable scope.
Okay.
And so in about 20% of the procedures or so in sports medicine, doctors will like to use a 70-degree scope to complement the workhorse device of a 30-degree scope. And so what they recognize is, look, it's a little cumbersome to have to come to the operating table, always have that 30-degree scope, or sorry, that 70-degree scope available, but only kind of 1 out of 5 times. And so their idea was, could you have a little knob, right, that would turn and have the ability to pan and be able to have a 30 and 70-degree scope in one. Yeah.
Right.
And there are actually some scopes on the market today that do that. Carl Storz has a scope called the Endochameleon that does that. The more we dug into and the more we moved in the development phase, and as I mentioned, Dean had the idea to say, okay, panability, interesting, single use, wave of the future, digital technologies, where the world is going, let's put those together and really do a moonshot. And the doctor's eyes got big, investors got excited, the project got off the ground, we moved forward, and we actually developed a really interesting prototype to be able to do single-use panable scopes.
Yep.
It was hard. It was really hard.
That's
And
asking a lot.
It was asking a lot to do sort of a, hit a grand slam in the first iteration of the technology. And two, the more we dug into it, the more I really saw from talking with folks on the field and really, an outstanding medical advisory board. Dr. Steve Snyder who's our chief medical officer even today, was one of those founding docs as well, Dr. Savino and Dr. Catellis. Panability was nice, but single use was really the core value proposition. Yeah. And so we recognized that in order to do single use, you also had to do it economically. So if you had a three-legged stool or sort of three competing kind of virtues around high-quality visualization, panability, and economics, you really had to make some trade-off choices. And so what we recognized was that if you were going to do panability, you're going to probably sacrifice consistency in the visualization, very hard to kind of keep that stable and whatnot, and definitely drive cost. So we made the choice, which I think in retrospect, I dare say was the right choice.
Don't forget to join us this evening at 5 p.m. for the opening tailgate party.
Yeah.
All right, don't forget.
There we go.
There we go. We'll see everybody at the tailgate
party. The most
party.
important announcement of the day.
Yeah. Smart to call it a tailgate party because we are at the sports medicine meeting. Anyway, continue.
So we made the choice, right? We made the choice to say, look, let's focus on what we really think to be the core value proposition about single use.
Right.
Let's focus on high quality visualization in the instantaneous image, and let's focus on getting devices that we can deliver at a price point where the promise is that we can deliver cost savings along with this next generation technology. And at the end of the day, look, the panability is a nice to have, but not a need to have.
Right.
And in particular, when you look at it and say 80% of the marketplace is going to be driven off a 30-degree scope, that's really where our primary focus is.
Yeah.
And we'll come with, by the way, a 70-degree scope downrange, but we're starting with the workhorse, as you would expect, and then we'll bring more and other SKUs down the line.
So one of the questions I was thinking about was, when you look at the other elements of scopes, right, who do you feel like, who loses to Pristine?
Well, it's a great question. So, look, it's going to sound a little cliche, but I actually don't think anybody loses by Pristine. Okay. And I'll tell you why. The truth of the matter is, it's my firm belief that the reason why there hasn't been a lot of innovation in the visualization space is because it's a little bit of an ancillary offering to what really the core interest is of the large med tech companies, which is really to either be in arthroplasty, which is about 80% of orthopedics, or in the consumable side of things on sports.
Right.
And so camera technology is really a means to an end. From a development, from a capabilities perspective, it's nice to be able to cross-sell to it, and people certainly are creative about putting bundles together and the like. And
so in essence, you need each other.
What's that?
You need each other?
Not necessarily need each other. I wouldn't go so far on the other end of the spectrum to say that, but I do think that what it is an opportunity for the entire industry to take in advance.
Okay.
It's similar to saying, and I'm not going so far as to say Kodak, that, and use that overused metaphor, but what we have is an opportunity for the surgical visualization space to catch up with digital imaging that we've seen in other spaces. where look, who lost other than Kodak, but they could have also been at that forefront. That's a different storyline. To move away from processing film and using chemicals and waiting for 3 days to get back your stuff from the drugstore to talk about dating ourselves, right? Reading the Popular Mechanics and the line, yeah. To now an instantaneous capability with quality that is far superior to what we are able to see, in that capability. So what we're really doing is applying a technology that's ubiquitous in the consumer space and now taking it into the surgical space. And that's why I say, maybe with a little bit of rose-colored glasses, I don't think anybody loses on that.
Okay.
I think that what that is actually moving the industry along at a pace that is appropriate, if not a little bit behind the curve. But the truth of the matter is, it probably takes an outsider, an upstart, to push that curve given the dynamics of the way visualization is currently configured in the marketplace. And so
Right.
we're pushing that, I'd like to think, forward.
And so, being that you were from the outside, right, it's interesting because I look at the technology of today and what you guys are bringing to the table. Pretty awesome image up there, and the clarity. And the thing that it makes me think about is the opportunity to influence lower cost healthcare, right? Procedurally speaking, are you seeing an impact with what you guys are bringing?
Yeah, most definitely.
How so?
We have this interesting paradox at Pristine. We are founded by some prolific sports medicine surgeons. Dr. Steve Snyder, our chief medical officer, belongs on the Mount Rushmore of arthroscopy, right? And so we have this prestigious medical advisory board. But the truth of the matter is that it's the day in and day out, regular Joe surgeon and regular Joe surgery center that we perhaps bring the highest amount of value to.
Okay.
If you're Dr. Snyder at SCOE, Dr. Gettleman at SCOE, Dr. Williams at HSS, got beautiful equipment, right?
Yeah.
And let's face it, all of the large companies want to make sure that they're there and serving those large, prolific, and prestigious customers, as do we. Take nothing away from that. But when you think about also the surgery center in Williston, North Dakota, that's doing surgeries as well as those in New York City or in Los Angeles, that surgery center has maybe 720p. They might have squeaked into the HD. Certainly not new state-of-the-art 4K devices. They're probably on their last leg. They're probably struggling, like most surgery centers, to bring the capital equipment or the capital in to make that upgrade into the capital equipment. If they can figure out how to actually upgrade into 4K with no additional capital expense and move into a mode where now they're able to get into a digital imaging configuration, preserve their pumps, preserve their other tools, which are, 30-year life to those things, that's a no-brainer for that facility. So we have this interesting dichotomy of prolific advisors and drivers of our medical advisory board, but then also bottom of the pyramid, sort of sweet spot, and where our offering and our value proposition really is even the highest.
Okay.
Are you a medtech company prepping for a big product launch and are struggling to get the attention of your sales team so that they can hit the ground running? Or are you a medical device sales professional who is frustrated because you have to go to one platform for sales training, another platform to access selling tools, and then go to your email to check for important company updates? Well, here at Convey Med, we've built a better way. Welcome to Convey Connect. Your bespoke, company-branded mobile app will become the single source of truth for your sales reps, resulting in a better trained, connected, and engaged team who will crush quotas. Organize your training content to accelerate Salesforce readiness. Customize your sales library so your reps can easily find and use the selling tools that move prospects to customers. Build culture and camaraderie with your own internal social media feed right inside the app. Built on a secure platform and customized for your needs, we can get your mobile app deployed to the app stores in a matter of weeks. Please visit conveymed.io to learn more and schedule a demo. Yeah, you're kind of describing the classic, for the strategics, the classic innovator's dilemma. Like, we have so much invested in all this technology. How do we disrupt ourselves?
That's right.
And you're sort of potentially doing it for them.
Yeah.
Talk about, we chatted about this before we started to record this episode, about the experience you had when you first went to market, what you learned, and how that is informing kind of where you are today with your current product, and then maybe just give us a little show and tell here.
Yeah, well, I think, coming from the outside, if you're in, or maybe even more pertinent, coming from perhaps the semiconductor industry, if you're in the semiconductor industry, your supply chain is wide, extensive, complicated, but you're selling into largely a consumer electronics-driven marketplace. And so your end use, you understand, is the CESs of the world and the consumer electronics and iPhones and everything else.
Right.
So I'm jealous of that product development cycle in the consumer electronics space because it can be so fast and because it can iterate so much, and frankly, it can also suffer a significant amount of error in it and say, look, break it fast and move and iterate.
Right.
You can't break it fast in medtech.
No.
And that's appropriate that we don't break it fast in medtech for obvious reasons. So if you take a step back and you sort of look through that track and what our requirements are to innovate in medtech, we have to get not only that first kind of, prototype-y proof of concept, 510K, and oftentimes people will break it into 2 steps. We all know that drill. But to get to large volume manufacturing and to get to that 510K, to approve that high volume manufacturing, you're investing in that high volume manufacturing capability to go to the FDA and say, my design is frozen, it's all locked in, it's all tested, and the application is thorough, and then you have a chance to put it in patient number 1.
Right.
And you hold your breath and hope that all of the testing that you did prior to that was sufficient in order to be able to not only serve the patient well in patient number 1 and the physician that you're grateful to for working with you in that first surgery as well, and then see whether or not you have to go back and do complete redesign. And when you're doing that redesign, you're also doing that redesign now not in 3D printed prototype parts, but you're doing it in a high volume manufacturing capacity that's been built and demonstrated to the FDA that that's your design and that's what you're going to market with. So the irony is that you get to that point and you're dealing with one brand new information in patient number 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then the things that you learn, you have to go back and apply into a relatively slow feedback loop because you're out dealing with stainless steel molds and other componentry in that high volume manufacturing mode. So it is a challenging environment. And what we learned when we did that was 2 things. One, we were spot on in terms of our electronics imaging. We had a belief, but no proof, that we could take a tiny image sensor and work it and modify it and use a lot of proprietary software to get to an image that would approximate what you can do with a large external camera today. And that's a pure kind of electronics undertaking, if you will.
And I imagine the technology had to catch up to that point. The core technology for the camera had to reach that point before you could invent it for this application.
That's right. You had to take off-the-shelf componentry or you couldn't afford to do it. You're not going to go out and build a custom IC. No. 2, you have to take software then that customizes for the application, and then 3, you have to deal with an entirely different lighting modality.
Right.
Ambient light is a whole lot different than concentrated light inside a joint, right? It's going to have a lot of reflection. And so we do a lot of things with software to actually modify an IC that's designed for ambient light to then modify for the concentration of light that you have in the joint. So we did all those things, and those things proved, I think, what in hindsight would be fair to describe as the existential technical risk around the business plan and the technology idea in the first place. Could you do with a tiny image sensor what you can do today with existing tower?
Exactly.
What we didn't know, and what we learned a lot, and it's sort of corny to say, but we didn't realize that the cadavers that we used in leading up to the launch didn't do a very good job of bleeding for us. They were challenged in one key element, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So no circulation.
Circulation was rather poor. Yeah. They needed a little bit of work in that regards. But what that, on a serious note, what that means is that we needed to learn more about fluid dynamics in a live environment. It was impossible for us to replicate in a cadaveric environment.
Interesting.
Right.
And so
interesting.
Fluid dynamics now, with the benefit of where we are today, is really a yin and a yang, or 2 complementary sides of the visualization requirement. You have to have a high-quality digital image, but then you also have to deliver fluid in a way that actually pressurizes the joint, maintains that pressure with a sufficient amount of water, creates the homeostasis inside the joint, but then also exchanges that water so that the water that you're looking through in that arthroscopic procedure is pristinely clear. right, in that environment. So you have to do both. And we underestimated the amount of fluid that was required on the inflow and the outflow coming into our limited market release.
Yep.
And so what we learned was check and then improve, really, on those two dynamics. We could do simple procedures well. 15-minute meniscus repair is beautiful.
Yeah.
When you're doing a more acute procedure, you're doing an ACL reconstruction, much more trauma, much more bleeding inside the joint and the like, longer procedure, we needed to increase the water flow and then increase the suction ability so that you had more flow overall. And we've done that now.
Influence your design.
It directly influences
Right.
design. I haven't had a chance, so
Let's
folks
show
that are
it.
watching might be able to see this bouncing image in the background. What that is just our test environment where we put the tip of the scope into a cup of marbles. So of course the joke is, where's my marbles? Oh, there they are, yeah. We also like to put it just to simulate, a more live environment. Here, inside
Yep.
your fist, and you can see what that image looks like. It's pretty good for ambient. What it's really optimized for is to be underwater and to be entirely in an environment devoid of any outside light. So you see sometimes this image anomalies that are a function of the ambient light in the room, the stray light it's
Right.
called in the image. But we're very proud of that. And when you look very up close, you can see some of the things we're talking about here.
Oh, yeah.
So you can still see texture even though you're, a millimeter away, and that is not accidental. There is an enormous amount of light
awesome.
optimization and balancing. It's called HDR, WDR that's
Yeah.
going on in the image there.
Yeah.
And you're not whiting out.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
That's very cool.
No hot spotting. Yeah. So you would be completely white without our proprietary software doing
Very
its,
nice.
doing its job. So that's the one half of the coin, and then just to go back to the thread, what we needed to add was some additional capability on the fluid dynamics side. So the original design had fluid that came in from the proximal end of the scope, delivered it through with a more traditional sheath, and what we've added now is what we call our high flow sheath, which is going to now be our base design, and that's got inflow along the lines of the more traditional sheath that you'd see. Inflow here and then outflow here. So
Right.
now you've got increased amount of flow in and then added capacity for your suction out on scope. So we see really great results now from what we've done. So that means limited market release, check the box, and now we've been in full-on nationwide commercialization for only a couple of months. So we're
Right.
just now completing that, feedback, and now it's lock and go and get out to the marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing.
What are like three of the top things that you have the surgeons coming back and saying to you or your reps about what they love?
Good question. So I think the first is, and it's satisfying when you hear it because it correlates with that sort of existential question. Wow, I can't believe that's the kind of image that I would expect. Some, look, to get way inside baseball, who knew? But it's well known apparently for the folks that sell these devices that there's different hues, and you can kind of tell a little bit about different companies that have a little different shade of that. So you get some little semblance of, do you like the Samsung or do you like the Sony, sort of TV in your rec room. You'll get a little bit of that, but that's really more of a preference. When you're getting into that type of fine tuning, you know that you've succeeded, right?
Yes.
Now you're in the game and you're playing really on a equal playing field from a visualization perspective. So like that. Two, interestingly, we get feedback on how light it is.
Yeah.
It's really much lighter, and some docs really could care less. Others say, wow, that's really substantial, and that they'll, feel it. A painter with a, paintbrush all day long in their hand is going to feel a difference in that,
Is
in
there
that
a learning
device.
curve because it's lighter, or is it in their hands?
What they're used to, the weight and the feel of what they're used to using compared to something that's lighter.
So I would say that it's not necessarily because it's lighter, but what we generally will say is that it takes you a procedure or two just
Yeah,
to
that's
make
fair.
the adjustment, right?
Yeah.
What we've done is intentionally design the device to be drop into the hand familiar to the surgeon. We have a writing mechanism that you can rotate, the image radially on the screen, all those sorts of things designed to be able to hold in multiple different ways.
Yep.
But also necessarily, look, we've taken a camera head that used to be here and now it's chip on the tip. We've taken a light source that used to come off side, now it's chip on the tip. We have a circuitry in the handle, so the handle, has to be a certain size. So I kind of liken it to, look, the first time I got in an electric car at the Avis, lot, I'm like looking over my shoulders and I'm sitting there for like 15 minutes going,
What do I do next?
How's this going to
where's
work?
the start button? So there's a little bit of that when you realize that all you need to do is put it in gear and then it just starts to move and you go, oh,
Okay.
got it. And you look down, there's a a vertical pedal on the right and there's a square pedal in the middle, you're like, okay, I can kind of go there.
I recognize that.
Yeah, and you kind of gingerly move out of the parking spot and off you go. It's very similar, I think, to that. So to say that you're just going to kind of snap would be a little bit too optimistic, but it's a procedure or two.
Yeah. That's a great analogy, actually. Makes a lot of sense. So you're ready to go commercial. What are the biggest barriers or obstacles you feel like you have to overcome as you are now, you've got 510K approval, you're worked through all of the LMR challenges, you've got it dialed in, as you just said. So what's next?
Well, yeah, look, I think Dr. John Ticker is one of our favorite docs, and he said to me once to help kind of think through his mindset and how many of his colleagues think. He said, look, if I have one thing I want to put on my gravestone, and I'll tease Dr. Ticker, maybe he could come up with something a little bit more, memorable and sentimental, but is that I remove variables from the procedures. So for him, the reason that he is considered to be one of the most, accomplished shoulder arthroscopists in the country is because he has fine-tuned his craft to the extent that the procedure is as predictable as it can possibly be, with the variable really only being, patient to patient.
Right.
So when you think about what goes through a surgeon's mindset to be able to get to that level of predictability in an inherently chaotic and variable set of circumstances, is an enormous amount of thought and process enhancement. And now what we're asking them to do is to consider changing their primary tool by which they do their work. So there is element where what you have to introduce to docs is in the same way that digital photography, and that industry needed to introduce to those of us who are still using film photography to say, there's a better way.
Yeah.
And when you get to the point where you identify that it's more than just that image on the screen, when it's the amount of setup time, when it's the cracked lenses that you have in the procedures, it's that light cord that's frayed, it's the increased amount of turnaround time that you have, all of the systemic issues, not to mention the sterilization that occurs behind the scenes that most of the time the docs don't have to pay a lot of attention to, and you think about it systemically, they say, I see.
Yeah. Yes, that makes total sense.
And so that's an important hurdle to overcome. I will say, just as an aside, that's for that surgeon who has everything down, to a T, a la the Dr. Thickers. There are others that say, I can't finish my day because my partner's using all my scopes and I don't have any scopes at the end of the day and I have to reschedule because I don't have enough inventory. And they say, when can I use it? And so, there's variation in terms of those cases. But I would say that's probably one of the hardest ones to overcome, is just the intense inertia, and rightfully so, right, for the practices that have been refined to that level, and we need to work into that workflow.
Right. So what is your first indication or indications? Knee, shoulder, ankle, all the above?
Yeah, so
where are you focusing?
Indications would be large joint. So this can be used shoulder, knee interchangeably. And to the extent that a hip surgeon would use this length of a scope for hip arthroscopy, you can certainly use it for that as well. Some hip arthroscopists, you're probably aware, like to have a longer shaft, and we don't have that on market yet. So this is really best for large joint, shoulder, and knee. And first skew is that 30-degree angle that we talked about. Next skew will be a 70-degree scope.
Yep.
And then we'll look at one or the other. We haven't made the determination yet whether we lengthen the shaft for hip or whether we go small joint. So one or the other, and the other will follow behind that. What's inconclusive is whether that large shaft is really, or the longer shaft is really necessary for hip, or whether we can sufficiently address and approach that marketplace without that. And we'll find that with some experimentation as we go. Primarily, hip surgeons like to use a 70-degree. So that's why we're waiting for the 70-degree to really determine the next sequence of iterations for scope. It's possible that our next skew, the 70-degree, will also be satisfactory for hip surgeons in addition to those shoulder arthroscopists that like the 70-degree.
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell us again how long Pristine Surgical has been in existence.
So look, we got COVID adjustment years, but to go back to the very earliest day of the first money in and the first meeting with the surgeons and the twinkle in the eye with DECA, it was about 9+ years ago.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So long pathway, right, and a fairly long pathway to get to that first kind of proof of concept. Some because we focused on that patentability and then shifted gears. And then right about that initial 510K was right around when COVID hit.
Got it.
So I kind of think about, Pristine really as being in three kind of generations, if you will. There was the early development days with DECA. Then there was sort of the second generation where we shifted and said, okay, proof of concept, now we got to build out manufacturing. COVID slowed, but it was really about manufacturing, and frankly, we needed to do a fair amount of additional work then to build and make a couple of design changes to accommodate the high volume design capability. And then the third was really, okay, design, high volume, ready to go, and then insert conversation around you don't know what you don't know until you get out in person. Yeah. And so really, I like to think about that sort of third iteration really as being about 12 to 15 months.
Yeah.
And truth, we worked on then the fluid dynamics as we've talked about. We're about 2 months or so into now our new fluid dynamics capability with our high flow sheath. And so, light and day difference.
Right.
I mean, it's a lot of fun to be able to go back to folks and they say, wow, I can't believe how far you've come in such a relatively short amount of time. Feels like, eons for us. But really, quite fast iteration. We're proud of that, too.
Yeah, that's such a story. It's a 9-year overnight success, obviously.
Yep, from your mouth to God's ears. We got a little bit to go, but we're getting there and excited about it.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. So, Bryan, anything else you want to share? Where can people who are looking for you or can find you? Are you guys raising a round, or are you guys good for now, or what?
So we have raised a round. We're good for now, but always welcome conversations with folks about things. We've got a wonderful partner on the capital side of things, our first institutional investor, who's been very supportive, and so no round that we're pursuing immediately. And obviously, next round will come, in discussions with them about how we want to proceed. I will say one other thing that perhaps we haven't touched on, and I think is an important element of our overall platform. We focused a lot on the scope itself. One of the things that we're also very proud about, and we think is really an additional frontier for our technology development, is our cloud-based platform as well.
Right.
So if I may just touch on that
just
a little bit. So, look, this is a piece of hardware. It's got a bunch of software that runs it, puts an image on the screen. But once those images are taken, where do they go? On a traditional device, you hit print and off comes a $5 glossy sheet of paper with all the images on it, and you walk them down the hall, and that's the way people handle their images.
I have one of those.
We recognized early that we wanted that there was opportunities really for digital connectivity into the cloud. And there are really two at least, and then a third, opportunity that comes from that. Number one is image management. Instead of printing to paper, put it in the cloud. We don't print to paper anymore. We store our devices on our phone and our pictures on our phone. And as we know, those pictures aren't even on their phone. They're in the cloud, and they come down one by one as we use
you need them. Yeah.
It's exactly the same way that we built, so a very familiar cloud-based platform. Two, we built the cloud-based platform also to address a critical need in single-use devices, and that's inventory control. So we automated the entire inventory management for our customers, which enabled our business model to be something we call scopes by subscription. So customers, instead of having to order and maintain yet another SKU that they have to worry about running out of on a critical element like visualization, for us, they simply sign up and say, look, manage the inventory for us.
Yep.
When we get to a certain par level and we know how those scopes are being used, we can track that digitally, reorder and send me, whatever it might be, 6, 12, 18, at a time, and they show up, go on the shelf, and all that takes away the risk of having surgeries without an inventory on your shelf. So that digital fulfillment is the second key capability of our platform. And then the third is where, of course, would any podcast today be complete if I didn't say the two magic letters? It's an AI on-ramp.
Yeah.
So we have the opportunity to bring AI also into the procedure because now we have a supercomputer in the operating room, cloud connected and facilitated, which allows us then to bring a whole new suite of capabilities downrange. We can talk about roadmap and SKUs on the hardware side of things, but now we also have an avenue to bring features and functionality on the digital side. So we just released voice controls, so we can say, for example, now Summit take a picture, Summit record a video. That automatically then activates the device, and you'll see in the months ahead whole new suite of functionality that we'll be rolling out then as well on the digital side.
I think that's a big deal. I think, What about all the data you're collecting? I mean, that's got to be a gold mine of information, all the images and stuff that you're capturing in the cloud for research, for future discoveries.
It is.
Are you doing much with the data?
Yeah, our first goal is to work with our customers to make sure that they have confidence in the data integrity.
Right.
And that's all managed. So it's all behind a HIPAA controlled environment.
Of course, yeah.
We will be bringing capabilities online where we're able to really give insights to our customers from a data perspective. And that's where I think for us is going to be the most powerful application
Yes.
of that. When you can start to get insights of variations from procedure to procedure, back to the Dr. Ticker example, when you can give institutions insights that they previously may not have had before, I think that's where the most valuable aspects of things are going to be, and it really continues our mission to serve efficiency and insights, primarily for our customers. So
Yeah.
there are opportunities there, but that's where we're going to focus our attention.
It makes total sense.
One last question. So with the inventory control element of it, you're obviously able to ramp that into your CRM system. Are you able to, so you're tracking how your reps are doing, you're able to do all that, you're doing the reordering. It becomes one circular, really slick device.
That's right.
When did you first envision that piece of it?
Honestly, early on.
Okay.
That was, I perhaps described the logic sequence in reverse, because we recognized early on that a Achilles heel to our business model is inventory control.
Yeah.
And so we talked about building that cloud-based platform to manage that inventory control very early on in our business plan and our business model. And from that came things like digital image management, and obviously later on from AI. So it was really about trying to think 360 around the risk factors around a new platform that we developed, that inventory management. You are correct about some of the things that we can do there. The other thing that we have not really explored much at all, but we built intentionally, is that we also have the ability to partner with other companies that have single-use capabilities, and we can offer digital fulfillment from our platform as well. So you can imagine then you go to a facility and say, hey, look, not only do you have the ability to manage this, but we also have a partnership with Acme Co. They've got their components, their consumables, whatever it might be, also at a logistics facility. You want to select them, you can select us, and we'll manage that for them. It's a partnership opportunity that we're just starting now to explore with other companies.
Is it a revenue-generating opportunity, or is it just playing with it right now?
So it's an interesting question. Look, my view is that we're a scope company, and that what we want to sell is scopes.
Yeah.
And in the same way that Apple gives a lot of value on that iPhone preloaded when you buy that, the complementariness of the hardware and the software, when you open that box and plug it in and it works and it has right out of the gate all the functionality that you need, could they monetize the calendar app?
Sure.
Could they monetize the camera and upsell you and say, oh, you got the base model, but for an extra, whatever, we're going to, upsell you to the other thing?
Yeah.
And
Maybe, yeah.
play some games with it? Sure.
Yeah.
I think that's penny wise and pound foolish.
Okay.
I think that at the end of the day, what we want to do is continue to delight our customers with a capability that is never ending in terms of the constant, innovation that we can deliver to them, seamlessly integrated, so that they know that when they open that scope, they get the same scope, and then that continues to have functionality that's added to that downrange, and continues to validate their commitment to being a customer of both Pristine's, but also having made the switch over to single-use visualization. So I see it more as a way to continue to kind of cultivate features and functionality than it is to necessarily
Make a buck.
pluck out, additional marginal pieces of revenue. We'll do just fine by continuing to sell scopes.
For sure. I'll be interested to hear down the road how your customers respond to that, because, many, certainly hospitals, maybe ASCs and surgery centers less so, use, antiquated systems to handle inventory. I'd be curious to hear after you do a couple 100,000 of these
Yeah.
in the next month or two.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah.
Yep.
How they are responding to your digital-first inventory management. You know what I mean? If it's outside of their workflow, are they going to struggle with it? Maybe not. You may have made it so easy and so much of a no-brainer that they're not asking for like a physical piece of paper, to do the inventory management. It's something that I'm curious and have been studying myself. So anyway.
You're spot on. It's a question to ask, and as we talked about, some of the things that we know that we don't know, that's a good marker to say we'll see what the market responds to. I will say, though, that one saving grace for us in this is that 95% of all of our procedures are done at ASCs.
Yeah.
So you are avoiding some of that bureaucratic complexity
Right.
of that installation into the hospital. And, as we all know, ASCs have got a lower, bureaucracy quotient, if
Right.
you will, to move that in. And to that, what you're really doing is providing a sigh of relief to an overworked inventory manager
Yep.
who says, thank God that you're taking that off my plate. And look, also removing a barrier, to adoption, right?
Yeah.
If you're adding yet another burden onto those already poor overworked folks, that's something that we want to eliminate.
Awesome.
So, yeah, so far we've seen very strong response to that, and the fact that it's all automated is a key part of it.
I agree. It's a big deal. Well, this was awesome, Bryan. Thanks
thank
for
you.
having us in your booth, and congratulations on what you built.
Thank you,
We're
guys.
excited
Enjoyed it a lot.
to keep up with what you're doing, and have a great rest of your AOSSM.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Great job.
Thanks again for joining us on this edition of MedTech Jam Session with Chris and Mike D. Please join us wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much. See you next time.